Ambassador Bolton, what's the principal problem with the United Nations?
I think from the U.S. perspective, the principal problem is the United States doesn't have enough influence. Certainly we have the veto on the Security Council, but that's basically a defensive mechanism. I think we too often are simply one out of 192 countries, and that despite the amount that we pay in terms of our assessed contribution and the importance of the United States worldwide, we are often very isolated, even from our friends in Europe, because so much of what happens in the UN happens in a bubble that doesn't really reflect much of the outside world's reality.
And what are some of the best reforms you can think of that we should do?
Well, I've been involved in UN matters for 20 years or more, and I've seen a lot of suggestions for reforms. Some I've strongly believed in, worked to achieve, only to find that they didn't ultimately change the outcomes very much. So, especially after my experience as ambassador, I came to the conclusion that there's really only one reform that could ever make a difference, and that's to completely change the way the UN is funded. Right now, most UN programs are funded by so-called assessed, or effectively mandatory, contributions. The U.S. pays 22% of most UN programs, 27% of peacekeeping, and the result of that is that our contribution becomes like an entitlement. There's no incentive for effective performance or responsiveness or transparency. So my one single reform is to change the entire UN system to funding through entirely voluntary contributions by member governments. We have evidence already from those parts of the UN system that are funded by voluntary contributions, like the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, the World Food Program, that they are the most effective and efficient because their managers know if they don't deliver, member governments will take their money elsewhere and spend it more effectively. So I think if the main UN couldn't count on its budget being funded, 22% of it being funded by the United States, you would have amazing changes in the UN system, and people would pay attention when the U.S. spoke, because they would know if we weren't satisfied with performance, our contribution could go to 0%, and then they'd have to deal with it.
Thank you for joining us, sir.
Okay, thank you.